Employment and Skills Committee. I have some small print I have to read out loud at the beginning of the meeting because today is the first day of the pre-election period, and members of the committee will be aware that combined authority and LEP facilities and resources may not be used for election campaigning or political purposes at any time. So members of the committee are advised to avoid putting the combined authority and its officers in a position that officers could be perceived as using resources to influence voters or promoting a particular candidate or political party. So you've all been told. I assumed you've all been told. I think that probably applies more to the councillors than anybody else. So welcome everybody. It's Phil's first meeting here as representing the TUC. So I'm just going to ask everybody to introduce themselves, and I'll start. I'm Councillor James Lewis. I'm leader of Leeds Council, member of the Combined Authority and chair of the meeting. So I'll start with Phil and then work around the room.
Hi Phil, great name. Phil Wycherley, interim director of inclusive economy, skills and culture here at the Combined Authority.
Yeah, hi Phil, I'm Shirley Condon, Vice Chancellor of the University of Bradford, a member of the LEP and the Deputy Chair of this committee.
Hi, I'm Councillor Jess Lennox from Leeds City Council, and I support the Employment and Skills portfolio on Leeds City Council.
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Milton Brown. I'm a private sector representative and the CEO of Kirklees Local TV in Kirklees.
Nav Giant, Chair of the West Yorkshire Skills Park.
Sorry, I should have said I was too busy reading small print. I should have said, can you press the microphones when you're speaking?
I beg your pardon.
Please, thank you. It's my fault for not saying that at the beginning.
Hi everybody, I'm Phil Day. I'm the West Yorkshire Project Skills and Development Officer. Been 3 weeks in post now, so looking forward to working with the unions and workplaces across West Yorkshire, around that agenda. Thank you.
Hi, Martin Hathaway. I'm the Managing Director of Mid Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce, which covers Wakefield, Calderwood and Kirklees.
Hi, Peter Glover, Research and Intelligence Team at the Combined Authority.
Hi, Sonia Midgley, Employment and Skills Policy Manager for the Combined Authority.
Frances Birkinshaw, Lead Project Manager working on the Skills Connect programme.
Pippa Sayers in the Adult Education Budget Team at the Combined Authority.
Michelle Hunter, Programme Development Lead for Employment and Skills at the Combined Authority.
Jo Ledchard, working for Job Centre Plus arm of DWP in West Yorkshire.
Tim Craven, private sector representative, work for TransUnion, delivering strategic technology change. I'm also chair of governors for the University Technical College down in town.
Alex Miles, Managing Director of Yorkshire Learning Providers, representing the West Yorkshire Skills Partnership Training Providers.
Hello, I'm Sylvia Dacre. I'm a Cabinet Member for Resources at Calderdale Council, and that includes employment and skills.
Jeanette Woodcock, Governance Services Officer for the Combined Authority.
And I'm Michelle Burton, Head of Employment and Skills here at the Combined Authority.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Khan, Councillor Masterman, Martin Booth, Orla Hunt, Tim Thornton, Peter O'Brien, Colin Booth and Sharon Riding, but we have a representative from DWP for Sharon.
Thank you, Jeanette. Item 3, there are no exempt items, and item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of January, is everybody happy to accept those as a true record, please? Great.
Sorry, I'm not on the list of attendees. That's the only comment.
Okay, we'll make that change. Thanks, Martin. Is everybody happy with those minutes? Thank you, Shirley, for chairing that meeting when I couldn't make it. And we'll move on to Chair's update. And I did ask officers to email around a couple of headlines of things to cover under the Chair's update couple of items that are have happened since the papers were published. So the first one is an update on initiatives affecting this committee that were in the spring budget delivered last Wednesday by the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I'm going to ask Sonia Midgley to present an update, then I'll open it up for any comments or questions from the committee, please. Sonia, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the spring budget, which took place last week, had quite a key focus on employment, with a comprehensive employment package focused on 4 groups: the long-term sick and disabled, welfare recipients and the unemployed, older workers and parents. There were some skills announcements, including additional 8,000 skills bootcamp placements in 24-25 to reskill in high-value sectors such as construction and digital, expanding the sector-based academy programme, or SWAPs, placements by 40,000 placements over the next 2 years, and an extension of the government support for Ukrainians who've arrived in the UK under the Ukraine V schemes, to offer intensive English language courses and employment support for up to 10,000 individuals. On work and health, the Health and Disability White Paper was also published on the same day as the spring budget, and that sets out plans to reform the welfare system, including the removal of the work capability assessment. Other announcements included a pilot for Work Well partnerships, which were announced to deliver integrated work and health support in local areas, linking job centres, health services and other local organisations to provide wraparound health support for job seekers, benefit claimants and those at risk of falling out of work because of their health condition, with increased work coach support for those who are long-term sick and disabled to be supported into work, including a new universal support programme to support job matching and in-work support for those clients. For older workers and over 50s, the budget announced an expansion of the Job Centre Plus midlife MOT offer, returnerships as a new targeted offer for over 50s to promote accelerated apprenticeships by bringing together existing skills programmes such as skills bootcamps and SWAPs matched with prior work experience, and some changes to pension tax to incentivise people to stay or return to work. For universal credit claimants, there were announcements around the increase of the administrative earnings threshold or AET, which is the minimum amount a person can earn without being asked to meet regularly with their work coach. For couples where the second member of the household may not be asked to look for work if their partner is already working, this will be removed entirely. Work search requirements to encourage over 700,000 lead carers of children for people on universal credit will be expanded, and they will receive additional work coach to help them with that. There was also an announcement to extend the youth offer until 2028 through partner-led youth hubs and specialist youth employability coaches, and the offer will also be extended to those not currently searching for work, such as young parents and carers. On childcare, working parents will be able to access 30 hours of free childcare per week for 38 weeks of the year from when their child is 9 months old to when they start school. This will be rolled out in stages from April 2024. There'll be an uplift to the hourly rate paid to providers to deliver existing free hours offers, confirmed changes to the staff to child ratio for 2-year-olds, start-up grants for new childminders, and local authorities will receive additional funding over the next 2 academic years to set up wraparound childcare in schools. Parents on universal credit will also receive their childcare support up front when moving into work or increasing their hours rather than in arrears. There's also a lift in the current universal credit childcare cap as well to support with childcare costs. Couple of other things just to highlight to this committee that I think will also be of interest was an announcement around that West Yorkshire is one of the places to get one of the new investment zones with £80 million worth of funding over 5 years, with funding for specialist business support, planning and investment and skills development. Trailblazer devolution deals for West Midlands and Greater Manchester were also announced. that include new enhanced powers and a single settlement of funding. Those Trailblazer deals had further commitments to devolution of the adult skills system with greater flexibility across adult skills programmes, so things like removing the ring fences of free courses for jobs and greater flexibility around funding rules, as well as greater oversight of the post-16 technical education system. To address the fragmentation of the careers landscape, Trailblazer areas will have oversight and be a convener of careers provision in their regions. There is also a confirmed role for Trailblazer MCAs to ensure the local skills system responds to local skills improvement plans. And on employment support, there is a commitment to co-design all future contracted employment support programmes between government and Trailblazer areas.
Thank you. We're certainly really keen to get West Yorkshire onto the Trailblazer footing as a combined authority and have the extra powers and resources that come with that. And thank you for the update, Sonia. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee, please? Nav, please.
Thanks. Just a question, really. I mean, do we get a feel for when the other Trailblazers will be announced? Or, I mean, is it definitely coming just in a while?
My understanding from the Mayor is that the department are now moving on to negotiating Trailblazer deals with a further set of combined authorities. Clearly, it is frustrating for us that we weren't included with the first wave. Obviously, we might not have had a directly elected mayor as long as some other combined authority has, but West Yorkshire has been in the combined authority status since 2014, so we do sort of feel we've taken those steps forward. So hopefully, it will be a fairly swift process. Martin, please.
It's a commentary on some of the measures designed to get older people back to work. That our initial feelings on this from the Chamber, from the businesses and from the people that we've been speaking to, are that it won't encourage over 50s back into the workplace that have already done their financial planning and retired earlier. It's not going to drive them back, but what it may do is stop some people retiring quite so soon. On the downside of things, we're actually also hearing that the pensions cap is having the reverse effect, that people are looking at paying more into their pensions sooner and retiring earlier. So.
Thank you, Martin. I think lots of us have had sort of lots of us informal feedback around it. It's like you say, when people have made that decision to certainly retire from their main career job, that's it. And people may look for some work at some times during the year, but quite often it's sort of linked in, not just with the financial position, but also with family commitments and things like that. And it is we've always recognised from the updates Peter has given us in the past around the changes in the labour market in West Yorkshire. I think certainly my experience is from speaking to people in the ward I represent as a councillor is when people have made that decision, it's not one that people are likely to go back on. Which, you know, like as a Leeds Council's a big employer, we suffer many of the recruitment challenges that other people do, and I don't think this in particular is going to is necessarily going to be a source of filling the vacancies we hold. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Dacre, please.
Thank you. I just wondered how the DWP felt about some of these changes, whether they think it's going to make a lot of difference to how you interact with your clients, for better or worse.
I think the announcements build on lots of pilots and activity that's been going on in some small way in different parts of the country. So I think there's certainly opportunities to, I think particularly for West Yorkshire and the relationship that we've currently got in terms of the closer working that we've got between the Job Centre Plus and the Combined Authority, think there's some real opportunities for us to look to innovate and see how we can make that work for West Yorkshire.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, comments, contributions on the budget? I take it there aren't, so I'm going to move on to the second item I'd like to bring up under the chair's update, which is an update on the local skills improvement plan. And I'm not putting Martin on the spot because he's been forewarned about this. But as we know, the Mid Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce and Western North Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce are leading on the skills improvement plan, and I thought it'd be really useful for everybody for Martin to give us an update on where we are with that, please, Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we've had the first 3 board meetings. We've put together a board and we've invited people to join that board, both from business and from colleges, university, from the chambers and from business representative organisations and private sector training providers. And we've started the consultation process, and the first part of that consultation finishes at the end of next week, when we start drafting the original, the initial findings. I think, like lots of government-funded projects of this nature that are announced, it's not where we'd want it to be at this stage. I think we've spoken to about 200 or 300 businesses, and most of those SMEs towards the medium size, not the larger companies. And that's the same around the country. It's actually finding those and generating those relationships is harder than we thought within the timescales. But I think this is very much part of a journey. So the year 1 is a case of doing something and getting the relationships in place and seeing how this can work. And then year 2 and year 3, when we actually show some of the activity that's happened. So we're speaking to businesses and we're asking what their skills are. As I've mentioned, many people will have heard me say this before. If you ask a business what skills requirements they have in the future, they will tell you what jobs they've got available now. And that's what they do. It's how they think. And so we need to change that mindset to have a look at it. I also think we may find some things that we don't want. So we know there are lots and lots of warehousing jobs, and so we need to find lots of people in warehousing. If we could end up with a skills strategy advising to just train people to work in warehouses, which is what no one wants, especially the members of this committee. So it's about fine-tuning it. It's also worth saying that this is... The need for this is probably less in West Yorkshire than in lots of other areas, because the Combined Authority on the before it in our area is really pretty much on top of the skills side of things. So this is about new. It's what additional information that we can find from having these conversations with businesses that will add to the development of the curriculum. So this isn't supposed to be a panacea of this is what businesses want, so this is what we train people for. This is just an indication that put together with all of the rest of the data that's already held and then is fed into those training providers and colleges and where appropriate universities to develop their curriculum or curricula in the future. So the first plan will be consulted on, it will be drafted during April and consulted on widely through the board and everybody to look at the nuances, to look at the specialisms that were coming up and to look at what we found out and then decide the best way to present that, and then it is reviewed in a year's time. But the whole of that year will be spent in continuing those conversations with businesses. So it's early days. Having those conversations is very important. The data we're getting from businesses at the moment is, as I'm saying, it's about jobs, but that's useful in itself. Having those conversations and knowing what jobs you've got, what apprenticeships you've potentially got coming up, and gathering it all together. So we're just making sure that doesn't go unacted upon. So if a business says, I need 5 apprenticeships and we can't find them, we need to make sure that they're contacted by the college or by a training provider as soon as we can afterwards. Otherwise, they won't fill in our surveys in the future and come back to us. So it's slower than we hoped, but we're hopeful it will pick up and be ready for publication and submission in May, with everyone's approval of that, with all of the partners and everyone involved in the delivery will have been actively involved in developing that plan. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin. Does anybody on the committee want to comment on the local skills improvement plan? I can see Phil and then Shirley do. So, Phil, please.
Just a really quick comment. Thank you for that update, Martin, and thank you for the acknowledgement that the work that we've done already here. I think this is really, really important work, and getting that business voice is often a challenge on skills, as I'm sure you're realising through this process, and kind of having that knowledge and intelligence and working together on that as we develop our propositions and offers is really important. So we're looking forward to continuing to work with you on that.
Yeah, sort of on a similar theme really, because I know you mentioned the universities have been involved, and I know YU's been involved as well as individual universities. But I had a question really about if this is going to be a little bit different to the other plans we might see because of what you've said about where we are now in West Yorkshire, how we might take advantage of that, and maybe in the time we've got think about how it might be presented in a different way, if it's going to be adding some additional value on top of the work that's already been done. And then my other part was, have you what sectors have been included, and any of the public sector and the third sector involved or not? Because I'm just thinking myself, as leading a big organisation of a university, I don't think we've been surveyed ourselves.
Well, we're making the survey available to all, but this is specifically not about public sector. We've been asked to keep out of the public sector despite the vast employment and the value in those areas. The voluntary and community sector are invited, but when we've worked through some associations to try and get some input from them, but we haven't had one response as yet. It's not everyone's got the time to fill these in, but we've now got people ringing up and doing them. But you're right, the community and voluntary sector also across West Yorkshire is really, really important and a big employer. And if its views are important to take into account. And how we present it is, I think that's the discussion. Once all the data's in, the first stage is that discussion is how do we make use of this? How is this different from what's there before, and is it useful? And frankly, if they're not useful and don't add value, then what's the point in doing them? But the first year is definitely a finding your feet moment, rather than saying that here's a plan and this is what it's going to be in the future, and then the government hand it to a college and says, right, deliver that, because you're not going to get that information. Even on the pilots that were delivered by various chambers of commerce around the country, one of the biggest learning points was they asked the wrong questions. So they asked questions that couldn't then be translated into a curriculum. So they just came up with long lists of what people wanted, and it was very specific rather than looking at sectors. And at the moment it's cross-sectoral, but it will be narrowed down once we get a feel for it. And we've got a meeting next week, and a number of the colleges are picking up sectors to come and feeding to on that. It's next week, yeah.
And I don't know where we are with the West Yorkshire plan. But I wonder whether there's any opportunities to be reflecting some of these things between the
So
Phil, would like to pick that one up, please.
Sure, Chair. So we're in the process of working on that still, so we can make sure that information's fed into that West Yorkshire plan. I know you've been involved in engaging in that too, as broadly as part of the chambers as well, Martin. So I'll pass that view on to the team.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in on this item? I don't see anybody else, so I will move on to item 6, which is the Green Jobs Task Force, which the Mayor has been leading, and I'll ask Michelle Hunter to introduce this item, please.
So just to summarise, the Green Jobs Task Force was chaired by the Mayor. The objective was to create deliverable actions in the form of recommendations to support the climate emergency and the creation of jobs and skills needed for net zero. The actions in the form of recommendations will support the mayoral pledge to create 1,000 green jobs for young people. The task force was made up of 30 members. We had a diverse representation from across different sectors, businesses, education, public and private sector. Young people's voices have also played an important role in the task force and the development of those recommendations with key stakeholders. The task force was planned to be short term, so 4 meetings took place. The final meeting was in February. At that meeting, the task force members endorsed 7 high-level recommendations that were shared with this committee in January. The formal role of the task force is now concluded, but the recommendations create ambitions that support the transformation of our economy, which will be underpinned by actions and lead the way for green jobs and skills that are needed to change the regional ambitions. The work of the task force has helped us position West Yorkshire as a leader in green skills and employment, and helped to support stakeholders to identify their role in the mayoral pledge. The pledge to date has delivered 1,007 pledges. 256 of those pledges are green jobs. And we know that as the actions develop, the pledges will rise, and the Mayor is currently writing out to all businesses to help to understand how we can support them through our business offers to create green jobs. We know that there is a wide-ranging forecast in the future and current demand for green jobs, and having the right interventions in place to respond to that demand is crucial. Some of the predictions around meeting our net zero targets could result in over 70,000 jobs being created between now and 2050, and we know that large numbers of jobs will be affected by the transition to net zero. We also know that there are over 680,000 homes in West Yorkshire that will need retrofitting, and domestic buildings are responsible for a large amount of carbon emissions. So the Green Jobs Task Force progress to date, the task force members use their time to develop and review labour market information. They commissioned 2 pieces of research, one on the green economy and one with young people. They looked at the alignment to regional activities that are currently happening across the region, and we did a large-scale consultation with lots of different stakeholders from across the region. The recommendations were based on 3 key themes. They revolve around individuals, businesses and educators, and we know that creating a highly skilled and future-ready workforce relies on interaction between all 3 of these stakeholders. The recommendations are all research-led and feedback and developed through feedback. The 7 high-level recommendations are outlined in the paper and are built around inspire, facilitate, embed, support, enable and strengthen themes. They're also underpinned by equality, diversity and inclusion ambitions. The next steps are that the task force have paved the way and really galvanised this work, and we've been fortunate enough to have some experts around the table to help us shape those recommendations. West Yorkshire, that set out kind of how we make sure that those recommendations are central to everything that we develop in future and in the existing interventions in West Yorkshire. In summer, the recommendations will be published alongside a report and an action plan. Task force members and this committee will be invited to take part in task and finish groups to help shape the action plan that sits underneath the recommendations. So in order to accelerate this work, we know that devolved powers across the skills system would help and enable us to do that at pace. This has directed us to some thinking around and considerations around flexibility of existing programmes, which are outlined in the paper. We've put an example in there about creation of a skills academy, a green skills academy, and how we could create an umbrella brand to simplify that offer for individuals and businesses. So the recommendations do provide an opportunity to influence and make progress for opportunities in our region to thrive in the net zero economy. So committee members are invited to share their thoughts and to be part of that task and finish group.
Thank you, Michelle. Are there any comments, questions from the committee on this item, please? Shirley, please.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe just a question about the strength and aspect of it, and there's a great opportunity to link this work to the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission work that's going on for a fair transition and economic strength, which would be good. And maybe just to highlight that fact about how are we really going to work together, and the academy might be a way of doing it on the demand side, to really increase the demand side. And whether there's some novel way, I guess there's no funding for the academy. I'm assuming it's going to be virtual and it'll be this umbrella thing, whether you could get some students from various colleges or universities to get involved, and how you might create branding and some sort of content that might start to form the basis of shaping up what a green academy might look like if you're really trying to engage young people.
Yeah, so, yeah, thank
Just
you.
an idea, I'm not saying, just...
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Phil, please.
Thanks, Chair. This weekend just gone, TUC held its annual conference in Sheffield with a significant number of delegates, and part of that there was fringe meetings and panels around the Green Jobs agenda, and it was recognised, and I think Bill's probably mentioned this in the past, that this is a massive issue and item and agenda within the TUC, and also with union learning reps and other representatives within the movement. And all of the feedback from that came back saying it's something that everybody wants to engage with and move forward. So as part of the role I've got within West Yorkshire, I'll certainly promoting this and hoping to deliver on this as much as we possibly can. And I think talking to everybody over the weekend, everybody's engaged and wanting to take this forward. And there were some delegates there from Germany and Norway. It was interesting to find out where they'd already moved and progressed with elements of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. And obviously Union Learn will help with existing employees who need reskilling in their own jobs, and it's an important part of this. Yes, please, Alex.
If that academy is going to be a thing, it might just be worth mapping what existing activities are happening in that space, because obviously the colleges are doing their thing on Skills Connect. We're doing some work with the renewable sector in designing some skills. There's going to be the Local Skills Improvement Fund off of the back of the Local Skills Improvement Plan, and there's probably going to be some net zero type things going in there. So I think just doing a bit of a mapping exercise of what's currently happening instead of just putting something in that duplicates what's currently happening would be useful.
Thank you, Alex. Councillor Dacre, please.
Thank you. So, did I hear you right, or was I not concentrating properly, that some of the pledges that were put forward turned out not to be green jobs because there were fewer in the end than were offered?
So far there's been 1,007 pledges. Out of that, there have been 256 jobs created.
Right.
So
the they might still be.
So there could still be jobs.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't listening properly. And the other thing, whenever I read things about this, it's not just the problem I always have with it is it's not just the college that will struggle to fund. It's how do you encourage somebody that they ought to train for a job retrofitting houses when you can't promise where the money's going to come from to retrofit the houses. And I just think it's really hard trying to put this as an option to somebody, because where's the money coming from? If I were them, that's what I'd be saying. Why don't I do something where I can actually know I'm going to get a job? But I mean, that's not really something we can solve, but I just think it's really hard to encourage people.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that point, Michelle?
I think just really to reiterate what we said, that we know that the task force recommendations will require devolve funding, and we know that some of this is about changing behaviour with individuals to help them feel ready for that demand as and when it comes on board, but through the limited resources that we have in the region already.
Thank you. I know businesses, to be a little bit parochial for a second, I know businesses have moved to Leeds on the back of our public sector decarbonisation work, which was grant funded, and like I say, Councillor Dacre, those grants will come to an end. I was asking the businesses what their plans are. It's about looking for self-funded work in that area and having a presence in Leeds and be able to deliver it. That's what their aspiration was. But you're right, some of it will only happen if it is if it is externally funded from somewhere. Some of it will sort of become part of construction and property maintenance as a routine measure, but some of it still continues to need that funding. Councillor Lennox, please.
My question was also going to be about funding. It's very similar, really, but it was I've not seen. Maybe there is. I don't know if there is any detail in what came out in the budget about more money for green jobs and the green agenda. Is there anything from there? And if not, is there anything that the combined authority, maybe in partnership with other combined authorities or other regions, to a bit of a campaign about more money from the government about this? The fact is we need to have, similar to what Sylvia was saying, we need to have this money so that we know that this is all going to be able to happen, so we can push it forward and push people this way with the secure knowledge that the money is there and it's not going to be something that is going to take a long time to get off the ground and then with, you know, no guarantee about results.
Thank you. Phil, would you like to come in, please?
It's hard to answer that question in a politically restricted period, but just to say, that and to respond to some of the other points, that there's a bit of a, for want of a better phrase, a chicken and egg situation here that we're dealing with, but there's a huge issue that we need to tackle, and demand is changing, and we need to make sure we've got skills to respond to that demand, whilst also trying to influence that change in demand as well, which is aside from skills. So it's an agenda I think we should come back to and have those discussions at a time when we can talk more freely in the public domain about those matters.
Thank you, Phil. Are there any more comments on the Green Jobs Task Force? I don't see anyone. The recommendation on this report on page 14 is we note and comment, and I believe we've noted and commented. So thank you, Michelle, and we'll move on to item 7, which is adult skills and the approval of bootcamp funding. Just to say before we start that in the interest of transparency, any committee member, as a reminder, who has an interest in delivery of skills bootcamp should declare that, but the advice we have is people are still free to participate in the discussion, but like I say, anyone with an interest in the delivery should declare that. So with that, I shall hand over to Michelle Burton, please.
Thank you very much. So firstly, hopefully committee members will notice that this paper looks a little bit different from papers that we've taken to previous meetings, and that's very much to take on feedback from you at the last meeting, where you really wanted to see a better link between the labour market information and the labour market context and the delivery, and kind of the extent to which what we're doing is aiming to address that problem. So we've really tried to bring together to share with you everything that we're doing on adult skills and why. And we'd really appreciate your feedback as to the extent to which that helps give you what you're asking for last time. And we do really appreciate the feedback that you gave last time. So what you can see in this paper is firstly an overview of what the picture looks like for adult skills in West Yorkshire. And Peter will pick out some of the key points related to that. We then have quite a lot of information about activity in the adult skills space. And we have 5 kind of main programmes in the adult skills space at the moment. So the adult education budget, free courses for jobs, Multiply, skills boot camps, and Skills Connect. And we've tried in the paper to bring together how we're aligning those funds to best address challenges and opportunities in the labour market, not least the issue of green skills that we've just been talking about. And then we've got some specific areas that we want to draw your attention to in particular within that. So we've completed a year of devolved adult education budget funding, and Pippa will share with you some of the highlights of that. And then we have a decision for you to take about the next year of skills boot camps funding for from the Department for Education. So I will summarise that, and then if you have any difficult questions, I will refer them to Francis at the end of the table, who's much closer to the delivery than I am. So at this point, I'll hand over to Peter to take you through some of the labour market intelligence.
Thanks, Michelle. So a sort of brief summary of the context, focusing on the challenges and opportunities that we face in respect of adult skills. And this is all covered in more detail in the paper. I think, first of all, the adult skills agenda is particularly important for West Yorkshire because of a number of challenges the area faces around the supply of skilled and qualified people. And this matters particularly because lack of skills impacts on individual employability, pay and progression prospects. But also what we can see from a place-based perspective is that lower skilled areas tend to be less prosperous and productive. So there's a definite connection between skills and productivity. Turning to one of the first points, which links into adult education budget in particular, we have a relatively large proportion of people who either lack formal qualifications entirely, or they hold their highest qualification at a level below level 2. And level 2 is GCSE equivalent. And level 2 is often seen as the basic level that you need for employability. So we've got about 320,000 people in West Yorkshire, or 22% of the working age population, who fall into this low or no skills category. And that's higher than the national average of 19%. And this situation has been perpetuated as well by a relatively low proportion of young people achieving a level 2 qualification by the time they reach the age of 19. And similarly, when we look at level 3 qualifications by the age of 19, that's also an area of underperformance. And it links into the statutory entitlement for 19 to 23-year-olds to get a free level 3 course, and also into free courses for jobs. But in addition to that, we also face a deficit of basic skills in West Yorkshire, and in the paper we set out the figures around basic literacy, basic numeracy, which of course links into multiply, but also we have a quite high level of people who lack English language proficiency. So it's above the national average, but if we look at Bradford, it's twice the national average. So that links into this sort of ESOL provision that we address through AEB as well. And there's also an important intersection with disadvantage. So around a third of the people who live in acutely deprived neighbourhoods in West Yorkshire have no qualifications at all. So it's partly about addressing a disadvantage as well as lack of skills. And also skills development is an important part about getting people into work. What we're expecting at the moment is that we may see hopefully a modest rise in the level of unemployment in West Yorkshire. So that issue around getting unemployed people into work, of which AEB is an important mechanism, could rise up the agenda. So we have a need for more skills and qualifications in our workforce for individuals. But at the moment we also have an opportunity to address employer skills needs in a tight labour market in a range of vocational areas that are seeing rapid growth in demand. So, for example, thinking about occupations that are accessible with a level 2 qualification, which is a core focus of AEB, we would include occupations like administrative roles, caring roles, retail roles, hospitality roles. We're seeing a surge in demand for all of those, or an increase in demand for all of those occupational areas. But looking at level 3 and above, we're also seeing rising demand there, but that's coupled with long-standing acute skill shortages, where available candidates lack the skills that employers need. And so level 3, an key example of that would be electricians. For higher level roles, we're talking about, in particular, digital professional roles, where we've seen rapid employment growth, and we're also seeing strong growth in vacancies as well. And that's also an area of long-standing skill shortage, even before the pandemic. But at that level, we're also seeing strong demand in business-related roles as well, so project managers, HR roles, marketing roles, and so on. So, and just to sort of reiterate, that implies a huge skills challenge as well. The areas in which demand is likely to be strongest are already areas of shortage. So we're thinking about skilled construction trades in retrofit, engineers to roll out renewable energy infrastructure. They're already key shortage areas. And in addition to that, those sorts of roles will need a top-up of skills to meet specific needs. So a classic example would be someone's working as a heating engineer. They will need to develop skills around heat pump installation to support the green agenda, for example. And as well as trying to build a pool of skilled recruits, we also need to upskill existing employees. Employers in West Yorkshire highlight a widespread lack of proficiency amongst existing staff and a need to upskill to reflect new working practices, new products and services, new technologies and regulatory requirements. And so the sort of skills that they highlight that need improving include basic literacy and numeracy within existing workers, basic computing skills, problem solving, as well as sort of core technical skills. And then finally, we've also got an issue around underutilisation of skills. We've got a lot of people who may be qualified at a higher level but are working in non-graduate jobs, and they need reskilling in order to adjust their career trajectory. So that's a quick run through of some of the key issues, and I'll hand back to Michelle.
Oh, thank you, Peter. So with regards to the AB, as Michelle mentioned, the paper primarily update is about the end of year review and the progress that we've made through year one of devolution. In addition to the report that's been shared, we've also commissioned an animation and an interactive website which are being shared through a media campaign. These help to distill some of the key messages, and we wanted to share the animation with you today. Let me just get the tech working.
AEB report 2021 to 2022. Did you know we're investing 65 million through our devolved adult education budget to improve people's skills across West Yorkshire? We're transforming lives, boosting opportunity and connecting people and their communities. Take a look at what we've already achieved. We supported 43,000 people during the academic year, 6% more than the previous year. Thanks to this, 8,700 people living in West Yorkshire got their first ever qualification, and 6,000 people got their first GCSE or equivalent qualification. In our region, we're helping more people from diverse backgrounds develop their skills than ever before. Over half of our learners were from a non-white ethnic minority, up from 2/5 last year, and this compares to a third of people nationally over the same period. The number of people with a learning difficulty, disability or health problem enrolling on courses also increased. There was a strong demand for digital skills, with 4,000 people signing up for digital courses, a rise of 1,700 over the previous year. We also saw increased interest in areas like construction, engineering and manufacturing, and high participation in health and social care, sectors where we know there are skills shortages. And we developed specific training to address economic issues, like the bus driver shortage. We are focusing our funding where it can make the biggest difference to people's lives. The proportion of learners from our most disadvantaged communities increased from 37% to 41%. And we funded 6,600 courses, or 12% of the total, for people on a low wage, 2,000 more than last year. We are targeting people with no or low qualifications, with a focus on boosting earning potential and helping people get on in their careers. Take up of basic skills courses like English and Maths increased by 33% year on year, with a 57% increase for people whose first language isn't English. The proportion of learners supported who had no qualifications or who were qualified at entry level or below increased from 47% to 55%. 11% of community learners progressed to an adult skills course during the academic year. And 86% of people who started a course with the qualification involved went on to achieve that qualification. This report provides more detail and examples of the progress and success we have made in these areas during the first year of devolved AEB. Let's take a look at the report in more detail.
Okay. So as well as providing a really positive picture on our progress, the report has highlighted areas which we are addressing with our provider base. So in particular, we're looking at cold spots where we are not delivering as well, and participation for those with learning difficulties and disabilities to increase that. Destination data, which demonstrates the impact of the training, is also being addressed. I just want to touch on the update on the rate increase. The 10% rate increase was approved by the Combined Authority following the committee's recommendation and has now been implemented for all providers. The Combined Authority has also been able to provide an 8% funding increase to providers who are close to their allocations to ensure that learning does not cease between spring and the summer. And we're also working closely with the job centres and Maximus to target additional funding to providers who may need more to meet those specific resident demands. Just an update on the Community Learning Review. So the paper also provides an update on the Community Learning Review, and it is overwhelmingly positive on the West Yorkshire delivery and the impact of how our community learning is delivered. But what's clear is that more data is needed, and there are some inconsistencies in provision. The review has been shared with stakeholders and providers ahead of publications, with the workshops planned in the coming weeks to gather feedback on those recommendations. And any recommendations for action will be brought to future Employment and Skills Committee and to, if we need to the Combined Authority, where strategic change is proposed. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions on the report so far? So the statistics Peter provided and the update on AEB, please. Shirley, please.
Yeah, just a quick question for Peter. You know, in 2.3, where you say 14% of the working age population hold the highest qualification below level 2, I just wonder whether that could be just checked, because I had a feeling that it was something around 75% of the population had level 2 and above, which would mean it would be more in the order of 25 rather than 14. But that could be me. You're the expert. I just remember reading something recently about it. 75%.
Yeah, it may have been an out-of-date figure that you were looking at, but yeah. So the current position is 22%, either with no qualifications or qualified below level 2. I think the split is 8% with no qualifications, 14 qualified below level 2.
Okay,
so I'm pretty sure.
So 14% you think is right?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments? I don't see any, thank you. So we'll go on to the schools boot camps, please, Michelle.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So skills boot camps, as you'll have noted in the paper, funded by the Department for Education to support retraining. Non-accredited provision, but at technical levels. And the Combined Authority has been responsible for delivering this kind of provision since the financial year 2020-2021, and have received the funding year on year from the Department for Education for that. We've very much integrated the provision with our wider adult skills offer, which we've tried to get across in the paper. And through skills boot camps, we have been able to support employers to recruit and to onboard staff, but support people from all backgrounds really to retrain in some of our most acute skills shortage areas. Most notably in the last couple of years of delivery in digital occupations. The decision that we're asking the committee to take here is to effectively accept the next year of funding, and therefore to accept and spend an additional £3.6 million of funding, which would enable another year of boot camps delivery up to March 2024, through which 950 participants would be supported. I think it's important to note that through that wave of funding, we are intending to do things slightly differently. So there is a lot of funding for adult skills, including through the adult education budget and other programmes that we've been talking about. And there is a real opportunity through additional flexibilities with skills boot camps to support businesses more directly through a subsidised model, which really addresses a gap in support for businesses at the moment. So this would be positioned more directly as a business-facing offer, with businesses able to pay either 10 or 30% of the training costs, depending on the size of the business. And it's also important to note that that this change request has been recommended for approval through an internal and rigorous assurance process as well. So we're taking this to you for your comments, considerations and approval.
Thank you, Michelle. Any comments on the skills boot camps, please? I'll take...
Thanks. At the last meeting, we talked about the death of traineeships, and I gleefully described them as a complete waste of time, given the amount of investment and the amount of outcome. Boot camps have come from the same place. I think the word boot camp excites people of a particular genre, so it's always used. They're short, they're sharp, they're all aimed at the same person, and there aren't enough people. But I think it's beholden on us to accept this, because it's an opportunity for people in West Yorkshire. But I think it's a perfect example of why we want that trailblazer status, because it's another pointless top-down idea that could be used a lot more effectively if we put our collective heads behind it.
Thank you. Now, Milton, please.
Yeah, I like the idea of boot camps, but in order for someone like myself and the folks I work with, in order to be effective, we'd like to know where they are. It says West Yorkshire, and it gives a bit on Kirklees or Bradford, but where are these boot camps and where they're situated, so we can either go work with them or plug the gap where there isn't a boot camp.
I'm happy to take that question. We have predominantly had a digital offer, so they've been available remotely across the region. Accepting the funding for Wave 4 would allow us to do just that, to look at the successes of Wave 3 and implement more technical delivery in locations, delivering training practically across the region. We work closely with the Consortium of Colleges and their providers to make sure that we have a spread across the region. One of the things we're also hoping to do with Wave 4 is work with local authorities to be able to grant a small amount of funds so that very niche training can be delivered at the discretion of local authorities, addressing their individual skills needs as well. We're also obviously tied in with that. There is some campaigns to be done to raise awareness of the fact that this learning is available in local authority areas and not just remotely across the region.
And that's the challenge for me, because if the local authority doesn't contact you or inform you in a certain way, or have the skills to even connect with those so-called hard-to-reach groups, how do they ever know? Because, and I'll come back to what Nav said, it's that top-down. And those that right at the bottom never get, well, I won't say never, don't get the opportunity enough to engage.
Absolutely, and we are looking at much more innovative ways of reaching those demographics of participants. Again, one of the recommendations in Wave 4 is that we tailor learning to be delivered in a way that is more specific to target demographics of people, having perhaps learning taking places in community centres, libraries, places such as that, and also marketing through those channels. Also, it is one of our kind of key thing. One of the things Michelle mentioned about as adapting our delivery for Wave 4, it was one of the things that we're really keen to address, especially as we look to differentiate ourselves from the DfE's national offer of boot camps as well.
Thank you. Alex, please.
Yeah, a couple of things. So some other MCAs have recognised that there is a recruitment crisis in FE at the moment and are using some of their Wave 4 boot camp flexibility to do a boot camp dedicated to recruiting trainers and for FE. Is that something that West Yorkshire are open to looking at, or have you already predetermined what your sectors are going to be?
Well, it's going in tandem. We've got some very firm ideas that we'd like to take forward. We've got some areas still in development based on feedback from committees such as this. The flex that the DfE allowing is very popular with everyone. A lot of people are interested in using some of that flex areas. We are, for example, scoping out an idea to work with the colleges about Train the Trader for ESOL in conjunction with our AEB team. And we are also potentially looking at things like project management and leadership for kind of the local authority sectors, FE sectors, things like that. We're very much in the scoping phase and would welcome any suggestions that you might have on that.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, that's definitely up for a conversation about that, I think. And then the other area, I guess, is just a mitigating risk factor is that boot camps are now inspected from the 1st of April. So has that been part of your procurement process, because they will be offset inspected moving forward, whereas previous waves haven't been?
It's in our tender documents to make providers aware that from this year they may be inspected. We work closely with the DFE's quality assurance team and communicate everything from there onto providers. And we also have within our own internal documentation quality assurance frameworks that we ask providers to complete that support offset inspections, and the DFE themselves have said that's a good example of something to use to drive that forward. We also work quite closely with our training providers to prepare them for offset inspections and introduce them to relevant support networks where they're perhaps not familiar with them, because I know there are a lot of training providers who are perhaps newly set up and haven't had their first inspection yet. And so that is something that is very much we're aware of and is part of our delivery plan.
Thank you, Francis and Alex. Milton, please.
Yeah, would you also consider project management leadership for small to medium-sized social enterprises and voluntary sector? That's, yeah, where we're building the economy from the bottom up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Project management leadership is a key skill that we've had coming across from lots of different sectors. We have trialled it in Wave 3 in a couple of different areas, but open to expanding it to more areas. And we are also...
And entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely something we can take on board, and also look at not just obviously skills boot camps, but our wider Gain Share Fund Skills Connect offer potentially also.
Thank you. Phil, please.
Milton, excellent point on community and social enterprises. I think we're doing some wider work on that in terms of business support, and I think there's a trick here in terms of connecting the wider offer together when growth managers, for example, meet people who want to set up businesses or expand businesses in that area, and we'll make sure that there's that link to skills where appropriate too. So a great point.
Thank you. Tim, please.
Thank you. So, as part of the planning for the boot camps, is there anything here considered about employability skills? So there's lots of technical stuff in there, which is brilliant, but yeah, they also need to understand what's going to happen in the workplace and how they need to behave and perform.
Absolutely, and with the boot camps being a minimum of 60 guided learning hours, quite frequently some of the technical training doesn't quite meet that, and so employability skills is a key part of boot camps. Obviously, it's all about getting people into jobs, and the employers having the skills gaps filled that they need filling, and so it's an intrinsic part of all boot camps. A lot of the training outlines and course specs that we've had, it's not just a small part of it, it's a key part of it. And where we've seen the real successes is where training providers have had that right from the beginning as part of the enrolment process, looking at people's confidence levels, looking at how people communicate and things like that, and ascertain those from participants right at the beginning, and provided that support to make sure that people not only get, like I say, the technical training, but then the soft skills needed. And we're actually hearing from employers that in a way those soft skills are almost as important as some of the technical skills, if not more important, because like I say, technical skills can be taught in lots of different ways, but it's that confidence building that's key to success really in a lot of instances.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the when we're interviewing, yeah, it's much more the who you are, yeah, what do you bring to the team, yeah, and yes, you need some technical skills, but as you say, you can learn those, yeah, much harder to learn how to work with people,
absolutely,
yeah, how to engage, how to collaborate, all those core skills. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Councillor Dacre, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I think my comment comes really on the back of what Nav said about whether we'd actually choose to use this model if we could, if we had greater freedom, because, and I suppose I should express an interest, shouldn't I, because Calderdale have bid for one of these for a skills boot camp, so but whilst they bid for it, and obviously they want to do it because it's money and they want to take advantage of it, what the officers have said to me is that they're concerned a bit about the conditions on it and whether they will risk clawback if we can't meet some of the conditions, and so they're quite concerned about that, and not concerned enough not to do it, and obviously they'll do the best, but they do have nervousness about that. And again, if only perhaps the authority had more control, it could design things that were more appropriate for us all. And the other thing that I was just going to say is that I just find the idea that Ofsted are going to come in for a one-year contract just really, what is the point?
It has been raised with the DFE about logistically how Ofsted inspections across the whole country will work for the sheer scale of boot camps. We're awaiting further information about the priority levels, who will be inspected first, in which timeframes and to what depth. And it's an ongoing conversation that we're having, but this is where, as I mentioned earlier, we're working with recipients of the funding to support them so that they are prepared should it occur. In terms of the mechanics of granting funding to local authorities, it is something we're still working through, and we welcome conversations with local authorities on how that works and clawbacks. What obviously we would much rather do is as much funding gets used and has as much impact as possible, and funding would be called back as an absolute last resort to the combined authority.
Yeah, I think I'm sure all that's I'm sure all that's true. It's just that I think the feeling is, as Nav said, you just wouldn't necessarily start it from here, so you wouldn't be designing it in that way with some of those requirements on it that government impose that maybe we wouldn't, I think.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Are there any more comments on item 7? I don't see anybody, so I'm going to turn to the recommendations, which are on page 26. So we have noted and commented on the AEB end of the year report, and we are requested to approve the items on the skills boot camps. I think everybody is happy to do that. I'm just looking around, everybody's happy to do that. It's great, thank you everybody. And we're moving on to item 8, and it's Michelle Hunt to introduce the future fundings programmes, please.
Thank you. So outlined in the paper, the Combined Authority endorsed proposals for the next phase of development programmes to support West Yorkshire investment priorities, building on the initial development of Gainshare and other funds. The next phase of support for investment priority 2, which is skills and training for people, will focus on green, digital and skills support for employers. Key outcomes to be achieved from this will be around reducing levels of digital exclusion, supporting people with digital skills, supporting employers with talent acquisition, and supporting people of all ages with a greater understanding of employment opportunities. We know that Peter's given a summary around some of the data and unemployment data. We know that we still have record vacancy numbers and our NEET numbers are above national average. The Digital Skills Plan outlines the steps that we should take to increase skills within the digital sector to meet the demand where digital roles are growing. The Green Jobs Task Force recommendations set out the ambitions to inspire and inform young people to respond to demand in the net zero economy. Ensuring that the region has a skilled workforce and clarity around the skills landscape enables us to retain investment within our region and supports employers to retain, attract talent but upskill current workforce. And we know that employers must be supported to implement digital and green solutions. The intention that we've outlined in this paper is to develop 2 strands of complementary skills packages, within which a number of interventions will support businesses and individuals in West Yorkshire. Across the interventions, there is a focus on underrepresented groups and equality, diversity and inclusion. The interventions also align to other investment priorities, in particular investment priority 1 and 4. The skills packages being proposed are being proposed with flexibility to enable us to respond to the labour market as that changes and the demand in our labour market changes. So the skills package is being proposed under 2 key themes. The first programme is Workforce Development and Growth. The objective of this is to work with employers to support them to retain and attract talent for in-demand skills, ensuring that businesses can access impartial support to implement green and digital solutions. What's currently being proposed under this is an impartial skills support service for businesses to connect businesses into our region-wide offers, including employer skills grants around digital and green, support to create jobs aligned to the mayoral pledge for young people, and also a mayoral SME graduate pilot designed to increase the uptake of SMEs accessing graduate talent. This proposal is aimed to strengthen and add value to local delivery and to help us learn from what's currently being delivered through and through previous programmes as well. The proposed outcomes are to support businesses to access talent, testing methods to retain and attract graduates, lower skills gaps and create impartial support for businesses. The second package is Workforce for the Future. The objective of this is to ensure that we have a skilled and informed workforce and people of all ages have access to inspirational careers campaigns. What we're proposing under this is a digital inclusion offer which is delivered across the region to support the acquisition of digital skills, regional careers and inspiration activity for people of all ages, including primary age, a further education development fund to include test and learn pilots for green skills, and a digital workforce for the future activity that will be employer-led and aimed at young people. The proposed package creates opportunities to develop inclusive and inspirational programmes for individuals of all ages, and the outcomes will include engaging young people in digital and green activity, supporting the FE sector to build capacity to respond to green skills, and alignment and enhancement across existing provision. The timelines for this are we're proposing that we develop a strategic outline business case that will go for sign-off through our assurance process to combined authority in June. Consultation is ongoing with local authorities and stakeholders, and we're planning to deliver these interventions from September. We'd like to invite the committee to endorse this approach and the proposed packages and timescales.
Thank you, Michelle. A bit of a different approach to the last one in terms of our ability to influence it here. So I'm going to ask if there's any questions or comments or observations from the committee, please. Alex, please.
Yeah, a couple of things. The SME graduate programme, isn't there already a graduate programme through Skills Connect? So how would that differ and complement? And there is also a DFE funded programme to engage businesses, SMEs, to engage with apprentices. So it feels like it might kind of cross over on activity that's already happening in West Yorkshire and on the patch. So I guess two elements. That's another thing for graduates, and there's already other stuff happening for SMEs. So how's it going to complement what's already happening and not try and displace that?
Yeah, so this is a place-based model that is aimed to pilot building on things that have happened in other regions, such as Sheffield City region, that really is a small pilot to work with 50 graduates to test how we can attract graduates into SMEs. We've got some feedback from SMEs that they find it really difficult to recruit graduates and attract them into their businesses in the region. So this is a pilot to test how we can innovatively attract graduates into SMEs. The Skills Connect programme will offer a wraparound support to that pilot and offer, we like to leverage and utilise those Skills Connect courses to support graduates with things like leadership, management, to provide that wraparound survey offer to graduates who are in those placements to help them be retained within those SMEs. And we're happy to look at the alignment across other programmes, such as the one that you've mentioned, Alex. That we're happy to do that. We've worked with some of our university partners on this, on the development work so far. So I'm more than happy to have a conversation about any other programmes that would be overlapping.
Yeah, I'm just conscious that there's a lot going at businesses at the moment, and there's just more and more and more initiatives coming up at businesses. And yeah, obviously we're all trying to do our jobs, and having extra things put on top of that pressure is not, I don't think, going to be helpful at local level. And then you've obviously focused on graduates, digital and green, which are all parts of the Skills Connect programme. So is this going to aid that? And then what about the other Skills Connect programmes where you haven't mentioned? How are they? They haven't been mentioned, like the social care one, for example, which is still a priority, but there's not any plans to do anything in terms of the future workforce for that. So it's just how you're aligning what bits you're picking and choosing to work on.
I think the impartial support offer for businesses will really help us to focus on connecting them into existing programmes. So, for example, if there is a need within social care and we have provision that meets that, the idea is that the package will provide that consistent and impartial offer to businesses where the landscape feels crowded at the moment. It's helping businesses and individuals to access the support that they need. So this particular focus is on 3 key areas. However, we know that there's so many offers in the region that businesses and individuals can connect to. So those won't be discounted through this approach.
Martin, please.
You've mentioned, I think Alex touched on it a bit, about the number of initiatives that are going on in the real. When I speak to businesses about skills, the biggest thing is they've got no idea where to go, or when they do end up somewhere, they think they're being sold something rather than addressing the needs that they've got. And they're also very worried again about displacement of their own staff. So the staff they've got, they're worried about moving on because we're at very nearly full employment as close to it. So we're all fishing in the same pool. But it's that access point. If there's one thing we could solve for businesses, make it easier, it'd make it easier for them to access the advice and guidance they need in a form that they understand it. And it's not searching the internet. They want to speak to someone and just answering that. And we're also seeing a bit of a polarisation in those businesses that are wanting to train their staff and those that aren't because of the salary levels. So we're seeing more businesses, fortunately, but mostly larger businesses, in investing in training, and lots of smaller ones not, because they fear that as soon as they train their staff, they go and work somewhere else for more money. And we need to change that. We spent an awful lot of time and effort showing people that investing in your staff is a good thing, and I'd hate to go back to think of to that old course of action saying that we're just going that they're just going to go elsewhere. And the graduates, the SMEs, it's great, but it's about changing the mindset of the SME that it's a competitive market now, and you've got to pay the right money, but that's only one element of it. They want to work for companies that are greener, that are doing things that give them opportunities and professional qualifications. But it's changing the mindset of the business and the employer as much as the individuals.
Thank you, Martin. I've got Milton, Shirley and Tim who would like to come in on this item. Is there anybody else around the room? And now, okay, we'll start with Milton, please.
I just want to pick up on some of the points about graduates going to work with SMEs. Many university students will go and do their placements. I think 150 hours that they go to university. Doesn't that give them an opportunity to have a look at the organisation, and the organisation has an opportunity to look at them? I think we could strengthen that kind of link, i.e. small SMEs to large ones, building that kind of partnership with universities. So therefore, while they're in the 3rd year or 4th years in some cases, they're already doing a placement within that small SME or large SME. I think that's a real strategy that works. I've seen that work continuously.
I think definitely that has been, we have been talking to universities about that. I think the pilot will also test some of those more non-linear pathways where there isn't an obvious work experience placement offer within that degree subject. So, where we can work with SMEs to, one, educate them, but also educate the graduates about the breadth of opportunities and transferable skills that they could bring into an SME. But absolutely, I think we can learn from that.
One more slide point I'd like to make.
Milton. Shirley, please.
Yeah, so I agree with what you say, Milton, and we need to be doing more with SMEs. And I just wanted to make a point about this programme in particular. So it is about targeting those SMEs that are finding it really difficult to fill their skills needs, where graduates could do that. So it's a particular pilot that's aimed at really using graduate talent, and it's trying to sort of make sure that graduates, as Milton says, see this as an option, because it's very difficult to compete with a huge organisation who's got massive graduate schemes running, and also the SMEs don't have the resources to proactively engage. So it's more about universities, the students as the focus, trying to support the SMEs rather than the SMEs being bombarded by another scheme. So I just wanted to say that the universities in West Yorkshire are really supportive of it and don't want to be overburdening people with this scheme. Can I just say something more broadly?
Of course, yeah.
Because obviously the focus, I think, in the proposal around digital and green is very important, isn't it, to the region? So I'm supporting what is here, but I did want to put a word, I guess, for maybe next year, thinking about next year. When you think about digital and generative AI in particular, which is really becoming a big feature of everybody's work and life and study, we've really got to be thinking about what we mean by digital skills, and we're going to be really needing in the future high-end digital skills. And I think there's probably a need for us to go back and think about the underpinning skills of maths and science and technology around that. Not to disagree with the focus for now, but I do think we need to have a serious rethink of the fundamentals, given where we are with technology at the minute.
Thank you, Shirley. I'll bring Tim in, please.
Thank you. A couple of comments on. So absolutely, there's the link from the graduates through to SMEs, but also could you consider also the route through T levels and also degree apprenticeships, as well, because we're getting with my UTC hat on, we've got 20% of our students going to degree apprenticeships, which actually drives a lot more social mobility, as well, because they just, it gets them earning money, and it provides the training, and it means that you don't have to run a complex graduate scheme, because a lot of the education is actually provided by the university or the provider. So that was just one for consideration if possible. And the other was, if I can get involved, I can represent TransUnion and also the University Technical College on 314, that whole area of business, and education talking to each other. I've spent 6 years building the model at the University Technical College, where we've got more than 50% of our board come from business, and it's something that's embedded into curriculum and what we do. I've just got a real passion that the more we can do of that, the better the outcomes for our students, better the outcomes for the region. And we're at 6 years of 0% NEET now. And I believe it's a real way of actually creating positive outcomes for students and better skills for our fantastic county.
Thank you. Nav, please. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks. I suppose a collective reminder that this is the most important thing that we're talking about today, because really this is us trying to show that we're grown up and we understand where we want to take the region and where we want to take the responsibility for being part of the task force in the future. All those points are well said and well made, but I don't think they capture the essence of where this document's going. What we're saying is, I think, is that all future funding opportunities we're going to try and channel in this direction. Is that right? So there's no pounds and pence connected to this. What we're saying is that we, as a group, say this is where the future should be, and we should be looking for funding to address these points. Is that right? Have I got it right? We can hopefully Phil or Michelle.
Yes.
Yeah. Or James.
John, come in, Michelle.
So no, this is the intention that this does directly influence funding priorities, including devolved schemes, including both Gain Share and UK Share Prosperity Fund, with, of course, more detail to come here for future discussion around the UK Share Prosperity Fund in future meetings.
Cool. So I suppose we as a group of people need to fully understand this and buy into it. And I'm just worried that it kind of reads like a whole load of points, and I've got a bit confused by what some of them mean. I don't know. It might be better because of the kind of comments that come from people. When it becomes a bit more mature, it might be nice to take a workshop approach to looking at this in a bit more detail, and then collectively we might understand it as well as officers understand it, because all those nuances between your view of what employer engagement says and what this bullet point says about employer engagement, we all want to be working off the same page and buy in wholesomely, but maybe we need a more nuanced discussion about it than you can manage in a committee forum. Is it too much to ask? I don't know. Am I talking rubbish? Somebody tell me. Just stop me.
No, I don't think so. Now, Phil, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, so a couple of things here. So we'll start off, I'm responding to a few comments. So this type of discussion, Nav, you're absolutely right. It is exactly what this committee is for. That's why we have people with the experience and the broad range of experiences and insight that people have. There's two things. So what we're asking for our own processes is the endorsement for this overall package in these areas, but potentially with some flexibility there to have, once we've endorsed it, to have some scope to kind of focus things where they need to be focused and building on some of the discussions we've been having. And just on that, to Alex's really excellent points about it, does this add value to what's already there? I think we need to absolutely, it's been designed in that way, and we need to continue to challenge ourselves on that and make sure we're adding value. Otherwise, it's not very good use of our resources just to replicate what's already there.
I'm not sure in the language it does that necessarily, and it feels like it's duplication and is going to offshoot what's already there. And I'm just conscious that there's already great established initiatives running.
And I really appreciate you making those points, and we need to reflect on that. In terms of Martin's points, I think we're going to be meeting you separately anyway, but I think there's an interplay between this committee, the BEAT committee, and work with the private sector more broadly. And I think one of the things this is seeking to do, which is why we should kind of support it, is try and invest in kind of helping that information gap and helping businesses navigate, because skills is very complicated to navigate. So how they get that support, and then on the points that Shirley was making around digital skills, we're on a journey here, and just to reflect that this is something our region is really, really strong in. So a quarter of all digital health tech jobs are in this region, in the whole country. There was an announcement a few weeks ago from the Treasury of the Centre for Financial FinTech in Leeds, and we've had some recent inward investment, PEXA, in Leeds, which is in this space in terms of kind of legal tech, and also kind of the radio frequency cluster in Bradford, Space Hub that Mandy Ridge has been pushing for. So we're growing this region, just as a few examples. We need to grow this. We need to be growing the high value and digital skills across the whole piece. So that's why this is here. So I think we are asking for this kind of broad endorsement, but we will, when we're taking that endorsement, we need to kind of work through the detail. So alongside that broad endorsement, we're happy to kind of do a workshop to talk through the detail and make sure we're kind of finessing it in the right way as well.
Thank you, Phil. And I recognise this is some of the stuff in this paper is very headline, and I think it's been a really useful discussion to understand as we move forward to the delivery of SPF around around the work we need to do, and having the devolved control over this funding makes it a lot easier for us to do that than previous papers where we've been talking about quite a defined scheme that's been handed down to us. I'm going to ask, there's been quite a lot in this, I'm just going to ask before we turn to the recommendation, if there's any final comments or observations that anybody around the table wants to bring into it. Tim, please.
Thank you. I absolutely endorse the workshop to dig into this and understand this in more detail. And just one other question: does this align with the West Yorkshire plan?
Yes. So it builds on it. So there's a few things there to say there. One of which is the West Yorkshire plan is very kind of high level and broad.
Yeah.
We will be working. It aligns with various other plans we've been doing, which lead up to the West Yorkshire plan, including the digital skills plan, the green jobs where we've talked about earlier, but also our emerging economic strategy, which talks about kind of key sectors and needs, which is still work in progress.
Thank you, Phil. If nobody else wants to come in at this point, I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 95, which is to endorse the development. And again, as myself and Phil and Michelle Burton have said, very clearly, this isn't the final time we'll be seeing this work at this committee. We really do, really will take on board the comments and challenges that have been put to us. Thank you. With that, we've just got there's a report to note, which I'm sure everybody's read. And with that, I shall close the meeting and thank you, everybody, for your time this afternoon. Thank you.